Pfeiffer in the supernatural thriller Wolf. Rap musicians can't get respect in fear of a black hat. And Macaulay Culkin reforms his low-life father Ted Danson in Getting Even with Dad.
Let her rip.
Not too bad.
Did your father teach you that?
No, Tim, he didn't.
Macaulay Culkin craves the attention of his ex-con father, Ted Danson, in Getting Even with Dad, one of the big new summer movies we'll be reviewing this week, along with Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer in Wolf. We'll also take a second look at the smash hit thriller Speed and see what message its success could be delivering to Hollywood executives. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Our first movie is Getting Even with Dad, and this is the latest in an increasingly tiresome series of films trying to cash in on Macaulay Culkin without ever thinking of anything new for him to do. It's a cross between the sentimental story of an ex-convict getting to know his son again and a cornball caper involving a couple of other crooks who look recycled right out of Home Alone. As the movie opens, Macaulay's dad, played by Ted Danson, is joined with a couple of other thieves to steal a collection of rare coins. But the brainy little kid who has moved in with his dad for a few days has figured out the whole scheme and stolen the coins from them. Then he tells them his terms.
Giants game, the aquarium, the museum, what? You want to go to these places?
I want you to take me. I want you to pretend you like having me around for the week. If you do a real good job, Dad, I'll tell you where the coins are.
After the death of his mother and the jailing of his father, little Timmy was sent to live with an aunt. Now he wants to make up for lost time and demands a week of fun like this as his price for revealing the location of the coins. Meanwhile, a female detective played by Glenn Headley is on the trail of the coin thieves, and before she quite realizes what has happened, she's grown close to both the little boy and his father. I think it is an unwritten rule in all movies like this that there is a birthday scene.
For all the birthdays I missed, Tim.
Getting Even with Dad is one of those movies that runs out of ideas halfway through, and so it sends everybody out to sightsee and visit amusement parks and semi-obligatory lyrical interludes so they can all become good friends. And that's supposed to be heartwarming, but then you have the caper plot and the completely unconvincing business of the policewoman falling in love with the father and son, which is totally concocted and leads to a very tricky ending that tries to explain why Danson may not be technically guilty of theft after all. I didn't believe in the movie, I didn't care about the characters, but I was kind of fascinated by the convolutions that this plot goes through.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad picture. And, you know, here's where they made the big mistake. Why not realize that the real surprise or juice of the picture could have been the relationship between Danson and Culkin? Now, these are two good actors. Let them at least try to establish some chemistry on camera.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
In other words, give them the scenes. Let the picture stand or fall on that rather than on all this other material, which is so familiar to us and so standard, involves no original thought whatsoever.
Maybe the original conception was there, and then they said, let's bring these two crooks over from Home Alone.
They put that stuff in because they don't trust the audience to appreciate any chemistry that develops between the two lead actors, and the stuff with the policewoman is absurd. I feel sorry for Glenn Headley having to play that role. Our next movie is better. It's Fear of a Black Hat, and it's pretty funny. A fake documentary about a ridiculous rap music group called NWH, which stands for something like, but not quite like, Negroes with Hats. And this movie is the black equivalent of the classic comedy This Is Spinal Tap, which was a fake documentary, of course, about a British rock group. Here, the three members of NWH explain to the filmmaker following them the meaning of their name.
See, back in the days when there were slaves and stuff, they would work in the hot sun all day, you know, with the sun beating down on them, hatless. I mean, not even a babushka.
Word, heads totally exposed to the sun.
you know? And so by the time they got back to the plantation, from being in all the heat, they was too tired to rebel against their masters, right? So what we saying with niggas with hats is, yo, we got some hats now.
Out on the street, the filmmaker, played by Cassie Lemons, asked one of the group's members, known as Ice Cold, played by the film's writer and director Rusty Cundiff, what he thinks of the recent L.A. riots.
The media was trying to say that the people looting was, you know, all lazy and didn't want to work. But I tell you what, you try carrying a leather sofa all the way from like Slauson and Crenshaw down to Pico or Venice or something like that, and then going back for them matching end tables, that's some work for your ass right there.
That's pretty funny, and in a PR move that goes wildly wrong, the group visits a grammar school with a rival rap group, and they end up arguing about who's tougher. What starts the fight? Ice Cold has found something incriminating in an old high school yearbook.
Look at this here, prep school. Look, my man, class of 87. See, bow tie, checkered pants. He was on the Glee Club. My man was on the yearbook staff. He was a yearbook editor. How you gonna be a hardcore OG gangster editing the yearbook?
That's funny stuff, but I also got a kick out of the backstage rivalries between the various acts, the various rap groups, as they're getting ready to appear in concert. It seems kind of credible what goes on. Also, another running gag is that a number of the group's managers keep getting shot. It's not highbrow humor, but it is funny, and it does poke holes in the mystique of the pompous street musicians. Fear of Black Hat gets a thumbs up from me.
Thumbs up for me, too. And you might have mentioned that the reason that they always have white managers is because their managers are always getting shot, so they don't want to have a brother get shot. That's why they have white managers. You know, rap music takes itself so seriously that it's really ripe for a movie like this, just as heavy metal takes itself so seriously that it was a sitting duck for This Is Spinal Tap.
The other thing that I found funny, I find it very difficult to hear rap lyrics but they made them audible here, so you could hear the parodies that they're doing of what you know the subjects are like. And they do have explanations of them, so you can follow it along. And some of the explanation,
the best part of the movie are the explanations. For example, the guy explaining what the name of the group means and getting into that convoluted sociological, political theory, and it was just fun to listen to.
It's a good picture.
Okay, when we come back, Jack Nicholson plays a New York publishing executive who undergoes a strange transformation in Wolf.
We got 5 new murders. What is there about a full moon? 140. I asked you to get me till 8.
7:40 at night, you dope. You've been sleeping all day.
Jack Nicholson plays a New York book editor there who's awakened by his wife after sleeping all day long. And that's one of the first hints that Nicholson is turning into a werewolf with nocturnal habits after being bitten by a wolf by the light, needless to say, of the full moon a few days earlier. And the new Mike Nichols film Wolf takes that idea as a starting point for an offbeat werewolf film that asks what would happen if an intelligent, sensitive, literate man suddenly found himself filled with savage instincts. The movie uses realistic everyday dialogue to try to make the story seem creepier because it's surrounded by the ordinary.
You know, it's funny. This isn't the first rabies shot I've given in the last few months. My wife's sister-in-law up in Oneonta. A raccoon chased her up on her porch and bit her in the ass. Last summer, the son of a friend of mine sustained brain damage from a snake bite. This kid was just sitting in front of his pool, and the next thing you know, he has brain damage.
At a big party thrown by the billionaire who's taking over Nicholson's publishing firm, the newly demoted editor finds he has a strange effect on the mogul's prize horses. As the days go by and the wolf begins to take over his body, Nicholson finds himself getting stronger and regaining his fighting instinct. Here he enlists his assistant, played by David Hyde Pierce, in an effort to open a competing firm, taking all his author clients with him.
Tell them we've got enough investors to get it off the ground.
2 things.
Go.
How many investors do we have?
I don't know. I haven't called anybody yet.
But you want me to say it anyway?
Yes.
Second thing, is any of this true?
Not yet.
You're my God.
Michelle Pfeiffer plays the spoiled rich girl whose father has demoted Nicholson. Any enemy of her father is a friend of hers, but besides, as he grows stronger, sexier, and more ferocious, she finds this older man increasingly attractive.
It's interesting. What is it?
It's good luck charm.
Really?
And the plot also involves Nicholson's bitter revenge against a backstabbing colleague at the publishing house, played by James Spader, with a kind of cool disdain that can make Spader's character so interesting. I think Nichols and Nicholson have tried something interesting here, a literate werewolf story, sort of like what Anne Rice does for vampires. But there were a couple of things I missed. In the very similar movie The Fly, where a man fell in love with a woman while turning into an insect, there was more poignancy and also more passion than in this story. This time, the story is told more in terms of words and ideas. I know they didn't want to make a melodramatic horror film here, but they almost went too far in the other direction. Still, Wolf did get me involved, and I vote thumbs up.
Well, I liked it a little bit more than you, then, I guess. And I do agree that the weakness is between the relationship between, the way it's played out between Nicholson and Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
In fact, I think the film's biggest weakness is the ending of the picture. It just sort of runs out in a very predictable way.
Yes, it does.
And unsatisfying. But before we get to that, you put your finger on the strength of the film as well, which is that it is smart characters having this happen to them, and that's really good, because then we can relate to what it would be like if this were going on in our presence. And of course, this is the kind of role that Nicholson can do well. I mean, it's great cast. You know you're going to be entertained when you hear what he's being cast as.
Nicholson is perfect for this role, and I got in touch with the fact as I was watching the movie that so often in werewolf movies and in horror movies in general, the people in the movie never seem to know what's happening to them. And you ask yourself, well, don't they watch The Late Show? I mean, haven't they ever seen any movies about this? Obviously, Nicholson's character knows exactly what's happening to him.
You see it. He's handcuffed himself.
Self-awareness, and his self-awareness leads to some of the best dialogue in the movie.
And the reason that I was disappointed with the ending is because there's a great opening scene between Pfeiffer and Nicholson where she first meets him. And remember, she's sort of disdainful of this older guy coming on to her. But then she gets attracted to him, and just the way she pats his jacket. When people see the film, it's a real fine little piece of acting.
So there needs to be a better payoff.
You got it.
Coming up, we'll take a second look at the hit thriller Speed with Keanu Reeves, and we'll ask the question, can Hollywood learn anything from its success?
The film is called White, and this is the second chapter of a three-part work by the superb Polish director Krzysztof Kieślowski. The titles of the three films in his trilogy are blue, white, and red, standing for the three colors of the French flag, and the motto, liberty, equality, and fraternity. And in White, equality is being sought by a Polish hairdresser in Paris whose wife divorces him after just 6 months after she correctly claims that the marriage has not been consummated.
Allô, police?
Non, non. S'il te plaît.
His life in ruins, the hairdresser decides to flee Paris and ends up being smuggled in a trunk back to Poland.
The place of Paris is just splendid.
Słucham pana.
Proszę pani, zginęła mi walizka.
Now, the back half of the story, I think, is much better than the setup, as our desperate hero vows never to let anyone ever get the best of him. He gains wealth, and then the issue becomes whether he's going to gain the ultimate triumph over his former wife and whether he still wants to. I didn't find White nearly as satisfying as Blue, the first film in the trilogy, which I thought was just great, with a great performance by Juliette Binoche. I haven't seen Red yet, the last one in the trilogy, so I have to reserve judgment, I guess, on whether White works as a piece in this whole puzzle. But standing alone, I just can't recommend it.
I do recommend it, and I have seen Red. I saw it at the Cannes Film Festival. And what I like about Kieślowski in general and about these three films is that you never have any idea what's going to happen next.
That's true.
It is not the kind of plot that seems to exist along a line so that you can see where the next station is going to be.
But Roger, when you saw this picture, now you saw it out, you saw him out of sequence, okay?
Yes, I did.
So I mean, I can't ask you to do.
The three pictures are basically not really related except for a little tag at the end of Red.
Okay.
But what I liked about this film basically was that this guy is such a particular character, such a sad sack, who manages, I mean, what could be lower than, you know, performing in the subway and then mailing yourself to Poland inside a suitcase, and then when he manages to become powerful and gain equality over his wife, or actually superiority over his wife, the irony involved in this strategy was kind of fascinating.
I have seen this humor That kind of humor, this brittle, dark humor, I've seen done by Polanski early in his career and done better, I think. And done better, frankly, than Polanski in Bitter Moon. And I really don't think that this film, as a unit, and also, I didn't care as much about this guy and this guy's story as Juliette Binoche in the first picture.
Okay, well, I kind of liked him as an actor, but I think the thing that I liked the most was I sat there for 2 hours interested in what was going to happen next.
And I kept hoping it would be better than what I was seeing.
Okay, when we come back, we'll discuss the surprise success of the new thriller named Speed. It wasn't supposed to be released until later this summer, but it was rushed into theaters last week because the studio wanted to take advantage of all the positive word of mouth it was getting in its early test screenings. Suddenly, Speed is #1 at the box office, and people are calling Keanu Reeves a major new action star. Of course, Speed is a terrific thriller, but when a movie hits a public nerve, there's usually something more to it than just that. The basic inspiration of Speed is that a mad bomber has booby-trapped a bus so that if it goes below 50 miles an hour, it's going to explode. This is not exactly an original idea. In one of the airport movies, the plane would explode if it flew below 5,000 feet, so it eventually landed in Denver. The bus, on the other hand, seemingly has nowhere to land. Keanu Reeves plays the heroic bomb squad member who jumps on and off the bus more than you might believe and even ends up underneath it trying to defuse the bomb. Somehow the movie makes room for a relationship between Reeves and Sandra Bullock, who plays a passenger who takes over the wheel, but one key to the movie's success is that it never stops for this or anything else. A thriller is only as good as its villain, and although it might have seemed like a cliche to cast Dennis Hopper as the mad bomber, since he seems to play the villain in half the thrillers that are made these days, he was a good choice because the film doesn't have to slow down to establish him.
When you explode, that's where they'll come, but that's not where I'll be. I have a different plan. Mess like that, they don't even count body parts.
I've read reports that the studio, 20th Century Fox, was surprised when preview audiences reacted so enthusiastically to Speed. Since it didn't have a big action star and a giant budget, maybe they didn't expect it to do well. But one of the messages of this movie is that audiences are uncanny at finding films where entertainment is the bottom line. Big budgets and big names aren't always as important as the traditional Hollywood craftsmanship involved in telling a strong story with characters the audience can identify with. Of course, that's not as easy as it sounds, but director Jean de Bont and writer Graham Yost had the courage of their convictions here. Just like their bus, they kept their eye on the road, and they didn't stop for anything.
I'm going to tell you one other idea that this picture's success should be sending to executives and also to screenwriters in Hollywood. And that is, don't just give us one thing in a movie. Don't set up the story in the beginning, the bus story in the beginning, and complicate it and then resolve it at the end. There are 3 sequences here.
Yes.
You get more than you bargained for. Now, I knew when I walked into the picture roughly what it was about, but I didn't know 2 parts to the picture were going to be there, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
You get bonus stuff in this movie, and why not? What's so difficult about writing a 3-act play with 3 things going on?
It is endlessly inventive. It just keeps coming up with new ways, and you think, how many different ways can they exploit each of these 3 ideas?
Right.
And they just keep coming up with new angles.
But Roger, you know, it's so difficult to get a movie made. Why don't people try harder with the scripts they turn in? Well, why not give us more? That's what audiences are saying. This gives me more than I expected when I went to the movie, and I hope they make a couple $100 million for it.
Okay, coming up next, our video pick of the week, another fine thriller made in much the same spirit as Wolf.
Consideration provided by Dollar Rent-A-Car, your vacation specialist offering quality Chrysler cars, including minivans and convertibles. Land affordable rates at a convenient on-airport location in major leisure destinations in the United States.
If you like the new werewolf picture Wolf, and I guess we both suspect you will, you might want to consider another fine, highbrow remake of a classic horror picture, The Fly, the 1986 version starring Jeff Goldblum as a scientist who finds himself gradually turning into a fly when one of his experiments goes wrong, seriously wrong. Just like in Wolf, the filmmakers take the transformation seriously, giving Goldblum fly-like powers and thirst. And talk about needing a sugar fix. And The Fly also is a beautiful love story with Gina Davis as the woman who loves her man, compound eyes and all. The Fly doesn't really need a whole lot of special effects to work. Director David Cronenberg finds the horror and the tragic love story and just lets his actors do the rest. The Fly is my video pick of the week. Check it out. Now let's recap the movies we reviewed on this show. 2 thumbs down for Getting Even with Dad with Macaulay Culkin and Ted Danson. Well, they don't develop much of a relationship because of a screenplay that constantly interrupts them for would-be slapstick laughs. 2 thumbs up for Fear of a Black Hat, the fake documentary about a rap group. This one does have big laughs. 2 thumbs up for Wolf, directed by Mike Nichols, an all-pro production with Jack Nicholson at the top of his game in a film that takes a lowbrow genre, the werewolf picture, and casts it with very smart characters. And finally, a split vote on White, the second part of Krzysztof Kieslowski's Red, White, and Blue trilogy. I didn't find it a self-sufficient story, but Roger disagreed and thinks the movie does stand on its own.
Yes, I do, and of course we also agree on Wolf.
Right.
Okay.
And Fear of a Black Hat is the kind of sleeper picture that I think, whether you're into rap or not, you're going to get the jokes in this film.
Okay, that's it for this week. Next week we'll be back with a special show called The Last Golden Era of American Movies, where we take a look at some of the greatest movies of the 1970s. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.